Welcome back to NCHS Live, joined by Avi Sarkar. I'm Isaiah Rosner, and we're bringing you the news of the sectional drawing for football. North Central, of course, in Class 6A, has been selected to play against Warren Central in the first round of the tournament. So, in case you don't know, the sectional that North Central is in consists of Warren Central, who they will be playing, Lawrence North, and Lawrence Central. I think most likely Warren should be considered the second of the three opponents they could have played, so Lawrence Central being one that they would likely beat, as they beat them earlier this year, and Lawrence North being a tougher opponent, even though North Central actually has beaten that team as well. But so that's the news we've got, but we'll definitely go ahead and break down last week's game, talk about the upcoming game tomorrow, and then, of course, we can talk a little bit about the playoffs in a few weeks. So, Avi, I'll go ahead and let you start. You were at the Lawrence Central game. I was not. So North Central getting another win in that one. I think it was a little bit closer than a lot of people thought. They ended up coming up victorious in that game by a score of 41-21. What did you say in that game, Avi?
I saw a Lawrence Central team that was, on paper, they look like they are terrible, but they can fight, and they will fight, and they did. And at one point, the score was literally 21-21, with Reggie Mason converting a two-point conversion to his receiver, Joby West. So that's how close this game was. But then the ticky-tacky penalties did not help Lawrence Central, which, unlike last week against Carmel, that did not help because our guy Max Gavich on WJA Radio, which we are both on to go listen, 89.3, told me last week, North Central in the previous game against Carmel was 11 penalties for 162 yards against Carmel. And now for Lawrence Central, thank you to Max Preps, don't sponsor us, has 11 penalties for 69 yards. And one of those, a lot of penalties were just on offense, and it's a very unexperienced offense. And then there was an interception that really turned the game around, which was Larry Campbell. He intercepted in the back of the end zone. And North Central's defense, we think of it as the best in 6A, and it is. But last week, they did not play to that. They did not look anything like that. But Larry Campbell's interception really took North Central off the snooze bar, started playing better defense. And also, I found out Deshaun Hunter had an ankle injury, so he was out of that ball game, but he will be back in against Pike this week, which he will be calling. So this Lawrence Central team, who's on the other side of the bracket, they played their rival Lawrence North, which was a loss, was 28-21. So that's going to be a rematch of, the two Lawrences to face, either Warren or us. So that's going to be good.
Yeah, for sure. So in that last North Central game at Lawrence Central, the defense, as you were saying, they did do a good job of stopping that Lawrence Central rushing attack, held them to just they had 108 yards on 35 carries, so that's an average of 3.1 yards per carry. Not too bad outside of one really long 47-yard touchdown by Reggie Mason. The passing game, and that's the quarterback, Reggie Mason, because the passing game, not quite as good. Mason going 16-26 for 224 yards, but he threw 0 touchdowns as opposed to 2 interceptions. Interceptions by North Central credited, let me see if I have it, to Larry Campbell and Zion Woods. On the offensive side of the ball, North Central was successful whenever they got the ball to Theron Johnson. He's, slowly become more and more of a part of this offense, and I think it's without a doubt he's the most important weapon for the Panthers right now. Johnson, 5 receptions for 149 yards and 2 touchdowns on the day. It's a fantastic day for him. Although David Smith, also a big day, 24 carries for 215 yards on the ground. So the rushing offense worked, and getting into Theron worked, as is the usual for the North Central offense. And now I'll go ahead and transition to talking about this week's game against Pike High School. So Pike is, not the best team ever, but they're decent. 3-4 so far. They've had some good wins, also had some tough losses, but stat-wise, I think, one of the biggest threats for them will be their quarterback, Anthony Ciadella. 1,407 passing yards so far this season, 18 touchdowns compared to just 5 interceptions, so he's fairly careful with the ball. And Pike goes with the committee approach in the rushing game, a lot of different running backs. In fact, let's see how many are there. 1, 2, 3, 4 running backs over 100 yards so far this season. Thoughts on the upcoming game, Avi?
I'm looking at that rushing attack. You got Isaiah Martin for 414 yards. That's some dangerous stuff. You got Gabe Carr, 262 yards. And Gabe Carr's a senior. And then Darius Williams is a senior with 212 yards. So that's something. And then Kermon Turner, who's a sophomore, has 105. So this offense looking good. And then on the receiving end, they have Xavier Simpson, who is the leading receiver, who's a senior with 400.
For that team, right?
Yes, for Pike.
For Pike, the Pike, right?
Pike. He has 7 touchdowns, so that's pretty good. There are other receivers that do contribute that are Danridge, who has 3 touchdowns.
Danridge, yep.
Danridge, yep. Or Dridge, sorry. Has 279 yards and 3 touchdowns. You have Lamar Eccles Jr. I remember saying his name a lot last year. He has 3 touchdowns. And I could just go on, but it's pretty solid. They have tough losses, but in the mix, you can't count anybody out. I'd say that.
The North Central, a few weeks ago, I'll just go over the last few weeks. They lost to Center Grove 47-0 and then had their second consecutive loss of the season. Also, their second overall loss of the season to Carmel by a score of 38-14. And then last week, beating Lawrence Central by 20 points. Of course, Pike is tomorrow, as I've said. And then the final game of the regular season will be a home game, the second consecutive home game, and it will be against Ben Davis. That should be a good one as well. But now let's go ahead and talk about the playoff game. So North Central, as we said, getting matched up with Warren Central this year. Now, when they played them in the regular season, it was quite the defensive struggle overall. So final score 10-0. Panthers did come out victorious, but really, they just shut down that Warren Central offense. Let me see if I can get some stats for you here. Yeah, it shut down that Warren Central offense to rushing attack to 2.4 yards per carry. That's really good run defense, and held them, zero touchdowns passing, forced an interception out of the quarterback, Prince Powell. The defense was overall great, but I think for this next game, for this sectional game in a few weeks here, they're going to have to do a little bit better on the offensive side of the ball. Last time they played Zaid Vestal, 78 yards for 1 touchdown and 1 interception. That's going to get it done when your defense is as dominant as NC's was in that game, but I think they can't really rely on that to happen again. Smith was not actually that good in terms of, well, I was looking at the wrong side. He was solid. I'll say that. David Smith was solid, 15 carries for 61 yards. And on the receiving side of the ball, Johnson, being his usual self, 4 catches, 58 yards, and a score. Should be a fun sectional this year. I think any of the 3 teams North Central plays, they could beat for sure, as they've beaten all 3 of them in the regular season. But I think also all 3 of these teams have a shot of beating the Panthers. Now, I would expect them to beat Lawrence Central, but as we saw, that game was actually fairly close, so you never know. And I don't think I mentioned yet, but when the Panthers played Lawrence North earlier this year, the 4th team in the sectional, they won by a score of 27-21. That one was a good one as well. So, Avi, any final thoughts before we wrap it up?
I'm just thinking about, I'm not, you're not supposed to go ahead with the schedule, but I am in this sense.
That's fine. You do it.
Yeah, I mean, you have the final 2 games. Ben Davis, obviously another team that we have to face as our last home game. So, Warren Central, this will be another defensive battle. It could be whoever gets to 14 or to 10 wins the ball game. So that's all I have to say.
Yeah, I could absolutely see that. Just a touchdown, a field goal, or 2 touchdowns could definitely be the deciding factor in this game. Yeah, I mean, I love offensive games as much as anyone else, but I mean, there's something fun about those games where a touchdown is just so exciting because it means so much. They're so hard to come by, and it'll be great to see if it's another defensive struggle in the sectional. But first, as we've said, we've got Pike tomorrow, and then they wrap it up with Ben Davis. So, thank you everyone for watching and listening to this. You can catch the game. I'll be on that one, and then Avi will be on the call next week on 89.3 WJEL. We'll have all these sports covered and the NCHS Live website. And, of course, if there's space available, you can go ahead and go to one of those games. They're both going to be home games. But for now, thank you for listening. And for Avi Sarkar and myself, I'm Isaiah Rosner. We'll see you next time.